Linen lost his temper. He held the gun to the hunter's mouth as tears streamed down the man's face. Linen said irritably that he had tried so hard to save him, to heal his wounds, and he only wanted to kill him in return for such kindness. The hunter stood with a torn hand and tears in his eyes and replied that it would not happen again, and let him go immediately. Linen lowered his weapon and looked at the man seriously. The gun was still in his hand. He said that if the hunter says that there will be no more, then it means that you should not do it again. The hunter fell back, squatting back in his rightful place. Linen frowned and stood over the man, holding his weapon out in front of him. The pharmacist added that otherwise his reputation as a doctor will be damaged. He was no longer going to make excuses in front of the hunter, and from now on, he would take the whole process into his own hands. The hunter's mouth dropped open in defeat, and he immediately became worried. The hunter's mental state dropped by -10. Linen started the chainsaw and pointed it at the man with a smile on his face. The hunter was even more horrified by this picture. He fell on his back and stuck his hand out in front of the apothecary, saying what the hell was he doing. The man ordered him not to come any closer, clearly not trusting such medical instruments. Linen explained that the hunter's bones were too hard, and it took a long time to scrape off all the unnecessary dead skin, so a short pain is better than a long one. Linen raised the chainsaw over him with a sinister smile on his face that stretched from ear to ear. He planned to use this huge chainsaw to cut off all the excess items at once in one go. The hunter didn't share the enthusiasm. He looked like he was about to die. The man continued to roar and beg Linen to stop and stop. The chainsaw reached the hunter's hand, and all that could be heard from the house was unbearable screams and screams. The hunter's mental state dropped another -20. In a room with shelves filled with various flasks with snakes, eyes, and other charms, there was a girl. She looked like a ghost, pale and fair-haired, giving off a soft blue fire. Snakes curled from the girl's hair. She asked if anyone was here, and that she would like to buy some bottles of recovery potion. Suddenly, a hand appeared out of nowhere. A hand immediately grabbed the girl's leg. It was the hunter who was begging for his help. A pool of blood leaked out from under the door, and the girl went to the door that opened. Opening them, she saw an apartment in front of her. A man was lying on the floor, reaching out to her, and Linen was standing over him, sawing at his arm. Linen noticed the girl calmly looked at her and greeted her, telling her that she was welcome and that she had apparently come to pick up her potions. The man's suit was smeared with blood, and his face didn't show any emotion or concern. Linen had a big smile on his face and added that she should wait a moment and he would bring them back soon after dealing with this customer, the hunter lying under his feet who was covered in blood. The girl clutched her head and screamed loudly. A notification appeared stating that the long-haired ghost's fear of Linen increased by +30, and then increased by another +40. The girl in horror immediately rushed to the exit with loud screams, and Linen followed her with his eyes. The system window appeared. Ding. Your popularity on the Alley of Wandering Souls has increased by +1, then once again ding. Your popularity in the Alley of Wandering Souls has increased by +1, Jin. You managed to scare the long-haired ghost to death. The ghost's character changed from calm to timid. Linen received the achievement, High-Level Repeller. High-Level Repeller, due to the fact that his methods were too sophisticated and often caused fear and panic among customers, the disciple of the Bloodsaw Pharmacy is moving along a road that was already impossible to get off. Reward, Fear of Linen +1, Pain that Linen causes +1, ding. Your reputation in Wandering Souls Lane is +1. Linen broke off and stopped nagging the hunter. How was it possible to say that he scares customers? After all, he is always smiling and friendly, and his main goal is the comfort of his own customers. This stupid system shouldn't assign such humiliating achievements to people like him. While Linen was distracted, the hunter had already crawled away from the man. Linen noticed this and immediately turned around and saw the hunter behind him, who was trying to crawl far away. The doctor immediately rushed back to him with the chainsaw turned on and told him not to run away because the operation was not over yet. Linen, with a look of zeal on his face, began to nag the man again as he continued to scream and scream for help. Linen tore off another piece of cloth, and no, it was easy to see the hunter's humorous. He blew lightly on the exposed bone. Linen turned to the man lying on the couch and said that everything went perfectly and he was done. The poison that had entered his bones had been completely removed. The apothecary put his hand to his forehead in relief and added with a smile on his face that now all that was left was to regenerate the purified flesh and lost blood during the operation, and the hunter's shoulder would be completely healthy. The hunter said nothing, frothing at the mouth. His eyes rolled back in his head, and he didn't react at all to Linen beside him. He didn't understand what had happened as he turned to the hunter and tried to shake the poor patient. A system window popped up with the message, Jin, you took actions to raise your level and make the demon hunter lose his combat abilities. A new achievement, Painkiller. Pain Reliever, an achievement that permanently increases the value of pain caused to the client using various tools by +5%. The hunter squeezed his eyes shut and opened them wide. He didn't immediately understand what was going on, and the first question was where he was. Linen stood over the man with a smile on his face and asked if his patient had finally woken up. The man immediately jumped up from the couch and pulled out a pistol from under his bosom, starting to shoot in the direction of the man. He opened fire and menacingly demanded that Linen not dare to approach him and stand still. A notification appeared stating that the hunter's mental state began to drop by -10, then -5, then -1. Linen barely managed to avoid being hit by bullets, and the bullets landed around his silhouette. Linen tried to calm the hunter down and told his esteemed guest not to be nervous, that he had already treated his wound and everything was fine. The hunter looked at him incredulously, still holding the gun and pointing it directly at Linen. The apothecary smiled nervously and kicked the chainsaw to the side, trying not to make any unnecessary movements and telling the man that it was better for them to forget all their internecine conflicts. The hunter glanced down at his shoulder and carefully felt the wound. He no longer felt the hollow sensation of scraping flesh, nor the irritating sensation of black butterfly toxin. All those terrible sensations now seemed like a nightmare to him. Linen exhaled softly. The man asked him if the doctor had really dealt with it so quickly, to which he replied that the poison from the damaged muscles and bones had been removed from the shoulder, and it only remained to start the regeneration of muscles and blood in the body. Linen smiled as he held the flask in his hands and opened it. He added that to do this, he uses the best regeneration potion in his shop specifically for the hunter. The good thing was that the man was in good health, most of the muscles and blood were already almost completely restored. However, the small area on the hunter's arm still couldn't grow back enough, so Linen sewed a small amount of another creature's flesh on it. The apothecary added that the hunter should not worry, because he had already taken care of possible troubles. The hunter studied his hand carefully. There were several stitches and pieces of leather stitched together on his shoulder. He was surprised that it was someone else's flesh. He clarified whether it was really pork meat. There was one pink piece of cloth on his arm. The hunter frowned and shouted out what the hell Linen was doing when he sewed a piece of pig skin on him. He walked up to Linen and grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, lifting him slightly off the ground. Linen tried to be unperturbed and replied that although the operation didn't go as well as he originally thought, but the result was excellent, wasn't it? He added that if there are any problems with this new prosthetic device, the hunter can always come to Linen for a free consultation. Linen wished the man a good secondary use. The man frowned again, looking annoyed and angry. He clarified what other secondary use was in question, and did Linen seriously think that he had done him another favor. The system window flashed up, and it read, "The demon hunter's mood has become extremely unstable. The crisis level increased by +30%, the crisis level increased by +55%, and the crisis level increased by +88%. Linen jumped up, slapping his chest with his hand. He said that with all due respect to his patient, although there were very small mistakes during the operation, but compared to the fact that he made a few mistakes, it was nothing, because if you remember what a hunter's body would turn into because of the poison of the black butterfly, then everything was generally fine. In this dark world, the most important thing was to stay alive. The man frowned and continued to hold Linen by the scruff of the neck. A notification was displayed that the crisis level had increased to 99%. Slowly but surely, the grip on the apothecary's clothes began to loosen. The hunter slowly released him. A notification was displayed stating that appeasement experience increased by +1, appeasement experience increased by +1, ding. The level of the crisis is decreasing. Linen held his throat, trying to stretch it a little and clear his throat. The man stepped back. He told Linen that the doctor was right, because there really was nothing better or more valuable than life in this world. He added that as expected of a creature of the same race as himself, being able to live in this dark world until now was an extremely amazing thing. The hunter's face instantly brightened, and Linen awkwardly scratched the back of his head and even blushed a little. He replied that it was nothing special, and the hunter, on the contrary, confirmed his words and added that such things always begin to realize only after torture. The hunter went back to the man and took him by the scruff of the neck again. He frowned, asking if Linen was thinking that the man had just praised him. The hunter asked him again so that he would honestly answer the question about whether he had ever performed operations before or not. Linen looked directly at the man and held up 2 fingers, saying that he swore that he had had a C-section before. Both father and daughter were perfectly fine, and they even liked him. The hunter looked at him carefully, thinking about the doctor's words. He dared to remove the poison of the black butterfly from the hunter's bones after a C-section. Although it sounded like complete nonsense, Linen still really managed to heal his wounds. The hunter's frown deepened and he remembered exactly how the operation had been performed. He said he didn't want anyone to know that the hunter had lost consciousness. There was a notification that the crisis level has increased to 99%. Linen, with a smile and a slight blush on his cheeks, replied that the man should not worry in any way, because the confidentiality of their clients is the key to their reputation. The crisis rate plummeted to 10%. The hunter moved away from the doctor and picked up his cloak, intending to pack. He asked how much he was charged, and that plus he would never dare come to this stupid store again because it was too expensive. Linen smiled and folded his hands in front of him. He said that there was no need to pay for the operation, and it would be at Linen's expense, but in the future, let the hunter visit their cute little shop more often. They would first do a favor for this demon hunter, and then perhaps they could use it as a money tree. A notification appeared that read, "Ding. You have completed the task. Your reward is plus 500 skull coins." The hunter put on a cape and before leaving, told Linen not to think that his flattery would make him forget about what happened during the operation and what he did. Even though they were of the same race, the hunter had always been a loner and would never take a man like Linen with him. The hunter pulled his hat down over his face and added that he advised him not to stay here too long, as he, as a human, had no chance of survival here. It was at great risk of becoming a monster's dinner. Linen folded his hands and looked at the monster hunter seriously. He asked how he could leave this world in that case. After all, Linen had absolutely no memory of how exactly he got here. He didn't know anything about the outside world from the inside, and the only place that was familiar to him was this very shop. The hunter smiled as he looked down at the boy. There were a lot of people like Linen who came here from different worlds, but most of those who arrived had already been swallowed up by this world long ago. All he could say was that here in this world, the main and most terrible bottom was Sin City, and if Linen wanted to leave this world, the fastest way was only to die. Of course, there was another way besides death, and that was to become stronger, strong enough to be able to escape. He pulled out a gun and held it to his face. Linen frowned a little at the hunter's words. So he's going to stay here for the rest of his life. After all, almost every time he meets a monster, he is overcome by the fear of death. The hunter grinned and said that regarding Linen and his methods, the monsters here were already afraid of him, not the other way around, right? The hunter added that without further ado, he was in favor of a fair exchange. Linen had healed his wounds, so he wouldn't be able to treat him badly, especially after the doctor didn't even charge him any money. He opened his dark cloak and showed the doctor various wares, weapons, files, and more. In return, the hunter offered to look at his things and choose something that Linen liked and take one of them for himself. Linen squatted down and carefully examined the contents of the man's cloak. He frowned slightly and rubbed his chin, wondering what exactly he should have chosen out of all this. He noticed 2 revolvers strapped to his belt. The doctor thought it looked pretty good. These were the Witcher's revolvers. They belonged to the White Magician. Characteristic, legendary weapon. Capacity, 6 magic bullets. Description, one of the most valuable weapons brought by the demon Akaros from the Earth realm. The weapon deals extremely high damage to evil spirits, vampires, gargoyles, monsters, and anyone else. The weapon came in a set of 2 magic revolvers. Linen reached for his weapon, but his hands were quickly intercepted by the hunter. He looked at the doctor carefully. The man smiled and said that the guy clearly had a good eye. He immediately noticed the best of what he had. He held Linen's hand tightly, to which the doctor smiled and said that in his opinion, such a weapon was excellent. The man grinned and said that of course, and wouldn't Linen even look at who they belonged to before. The doctor asked if the man really killed demons with these revolvers, to which he said that no, he had never killed anyone with them, including monsters. To Linen's curious question why, he abruptly released him so that the doctor collapsed on the floor, pulled out a revolver from under his bosom and fired it. Linen immediately turned pale and rolled down, looking at the bullet holes on his side. The hunter blew on the muzzle, which was oozing smoke from the shot. It was the best weapon, but these 2 revolvers had a serious flaw, and Linen should have noticed it by now. Linen exhaled, taking a closer look and asking if it was a human shape. The hunter chuckled at his words, adjusting his hat with his weapon. A human shape. Although it was beautifully said, but to be more precise, these 2 weapons were once cursed. No matter what angle you shoot from, the bullet will never hit the target accurately. That's why when he started shooting Linen last time, he never hit him, the bullets just outlined the silhouette of the guy. The man began to put the revolvers back in his shirt. Simply put, he usually used them just to look dangerous, and nothing more. They were not capable of anything else. Linen looked a little disappointed. He turned away from the man and said that since this was the case, he didn't really want those guns anymore. As soon as the doctor turned away, the hunter with a satisfied smile on his face started shooting at the guy again so that he only had time to jump away. The man said that he was the person who paid the most attention to justice and reliability, and since Linen chose this particular weapon, it means that he no longer had the right to refuse it. To do otherwise was to look down on the hunter. He decided to give Linen another chance and use the weapon, or the doctor could just walk away with nothing else. Linen decided that he should just forget about it, as long as he put the gun away. The doctor said a little hesitantly that he still wanted a gun. With a satisfied smile, the man slapped the table and placed the revolver in front of him. He said that it took him a very long time to voluntarily get rid of this weapon because of the curse. Linen could now use it as a weapon, which was a relief to the hunter himself. Linen asked perplexedly what he meant by that. He picked up the weapon and held it out. He explained it that he hadn't been able to get rid of the gun for a long time because of the curse. Only members of the human race could show such a keen desire to get something. However, these revolvers could only be transferred through fair trade. Plus, there weren't many people in this world, so it wasn't easy to find someone to give these weapons to. Linen pointed a finger at himself and asked if the hunter had deceived him on purpose. The man with an awkward smile on his face held up a finger and said that Linen tormented him before the operation as much as he is tormenting him now, so they were even. And since Linen had done him such a great favor, then he would tell him something very important. A notification was displayed that the hunter's favorability had increased by +20. The man looked a little flustered. The hunter said that tonight, under no circumstances should you make any noise, do not turn on the light, and even more so do not open the door to anyone. They had extremely suspicious creatures here. Linen frowned and asked if the man was referring to a particular monster. The hunter wrapped his cloak around himself, slowly disappearing into the shadows. He added that it was better for Linen not to know, and also that if he lived until tomorrow, they might see each other again. Linen watched the hunter disappear into the shadows. The doctor was sitting on a chair, examining the weapon in his hand. The demon hunter had told him much the same thing as the teacher. Linen will have to be more careful today anyway. Linen looked out the window and looked at the bunch of red eyes shining from there. It was still half an hour before nightfall. No normal creature should have come at this time. However, the pharmacist's level rose again. At this rate of growth, it won't be long before it becomes very difficult to handle. He looked at the little girl sleeping peacefully in front of him. It was a blood child of an evil spirit. Level 7. Feature: acts chaotically. Description: ghost spirits are formed from resentment and negative energy. This evil spirit was formed as a result of absorbing the blood of a large number of animal spirits. Once formed, it will consume the host's soul and flesh, then grow in size and become a plague. Linen held out his gun and pointed it at the sleeping girl in front of him. Yes, it was just the thing to try out the gun and see if it really didn't hit or not. A gunshot rang out, and the sleeping girl's eyes snapped open. Bloodchild's fear immediately increased by +10. Linen blew on the muzzle, blowing away the smoke. He was surprised by the result and the fact that the bullet really missed and did not hit the girl. Linen didn't believe in curses, so he decided that it would be a good idea to start shooting at the blood child. The girl clutched her head in horror, not understanding what was happening at all. A notification appeared: fear of blood child +10, fear of blood child +10, fear of blood child +10. Suddenly all was still. The front door swung open. Linen turned around and peered intently into the darkness. Many red eyes stared back at him. He immediately rushed to the exit and held out the lantern. Darkness enveloped him. Linen quickly slammed the door and locked it. The lock began to shake wildly. Linen was carefully looking at the front door with a gun in his other hand. Once the light of the soul lamp was extinguished and the sky was shrouded in darkness, this night would be his greatest test in this world. Because any monster can break into his hideout. Night fell. A notification appeared that read: ding. You launched the Sleepless Night mission. Quest conditions: survive until dawn the next day. Quest reward: +500 skull coins, +1 level, +1 special reward. Linen and the girl went into the room and hid on the bed under the covers. There was silence. He held the little girl close to him and kept the knife in his hand just in case. His face was rather restless. At the moment, nothing terrible was happening. Linen only hoped that this evening would pass quickly and calmly. It was already midnight. Suddenly there was a voice outside the door. The voice called out his name, Linen, and said that it was Sijai, and he immediately opened the door for him. The voice was shouting that an evil spirit was chasing after him, and he had to hurry and let it in quickly. Linen abruptly jumped out of bed, and the girl looked at him questioningly. A teacher? How could he suddenly return so unexpectedly early? The voice kept calling out to Linen and telling him to hurry up and open the door for him quickly, otherwise his teacher would die a little more. Linen got up from the bed and went to the door. He replied that he was on his way, and the teacher waited for him a little longer. Linen was about to reach for the door handle, but after a second, he stopped and changed his mind. The doctor frowned and held out his knife. He shouted out that no one outside could help him and he was doomed to die. Linen suddenly raised his knife and stuck it right in the door. Red blood immediately spurted out from the cracks in the door. For a moment, all was quiet. A voice outside the door asked how come Linen didn't even bother to check who he was before stabbing the door. Linen frowned and replied that if he was outside, his teacher wouldn't hesitate to stab him for speaking to someone incomprehensible. Besides, the teacher would never have returned at this time, so the person behind the door simply couldn't be his teacher. Linen leaned against the door and listened more closely. He heard a rustling sound, and at the same moment a clawed hand pierced the door. It was a gray hand with black claws. A notification appeared that Linen's mental state had dropped by -10. A hand reached through the hole in the door and dragged its claws across it, leaving huge, long footprints. Linen stabbed a knife into his hand in a panic. He was visibly frightened by the current situation. The monster behind the door threatened to devour him, that it wanted to tear him to pieces and chew his flesh slowly piece by piece. Multiple hands pierced through the door. One grabbed him by the hair, the other by the throat, and the other hands were grabbing at other parts of his body. The monster continued to threaten and shout that it would devour Linen. There was a slight look of panic on the apothecary's face. He remembered what was wrapped around his wrist. This was supposed to work, wasn't it? The glowing red thread was the hair of an evil spirit. He tossed a hair on his arm in the doorway. It formed many nodes and branches. They began to envelop all the hands that were stuck in the door. The monster began to writhe and scream as the hair continued to wrap around its arms. Linen stared at the painting in front of him in silence. Linen grabbed the overgrown tangle of hair and pulled it towards him. This ghost couldn't possibly be stronger than him. He would definitely be able to handle it. Linen held the resulting red stringy tail tightly. Suddenly, many of the monster's hands loosened on the door. I think he was dead. Linen picked up a knife and intended to cut off the resulting hair. It didn't matter if he was definitely dead or not, there were still a few more strikes to be made just in case. Linen stabbed the monster's hands. A notification appeared that read, "Ding. You killed a bloodthirsty ghost +1, your reward, +100 experience points." Linen was even a little surprised that the monster could die so quickly and just like that. Blood dripped down from the entrance, and the entrance was covered in the blood of a bloodthirsty monster. As soon as it was midnight, monsters came to the store's door. Who knows what else might be hidden behind them? Linen carefully closed the door, closing it tightly. He prepared a mop, cleaning up the mess from the huge pool of blood in the aisle. Linen thought that he probably wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. Suddenly, during the cleaning process, alarm signs appeared on which it said, "Warning. Warning. Maximum evil level monsters are approaching. The danger level is 100%. Linen roused himself. What do you mean, the maximum level of evil? Wasn't this the big guy who was supposed to show up tonight that the demon hunter had told him about? Linen stood not far from the door and watched her closely. Linen leaned his back against it and listened carefully. Suddenly, the monster's hands, which had been hanging limply, began to tremble. Abruptly, they sprang to life, climbing out of the door's trap and tearing them back out. Blood gushed out of the door, and the stench was terrible. Linen had to cover her mouth with her hand because of the strong smell. The doctor leaned over and saw something in the hole in the door. A dark black eye stared at him and followed him closely. Expanding, it disappeared after a moment. Something huge was standing outside the door. All that was visible was the red pupil on the huge black eye peering through the crack. Linen became nervous. He put a hand to his chest. This monster had an incredibly loud heartbeat. He saw a small piece of tongue in one of the slits of the door. The boy frowned slightly, lowering his gaze. Was this monster licking up his blood? A notification appeared that said, "Mental state -1, mental state -1. To him, the sound of the door being licked was pretty cute. The voice of a little girl eating ice cream immediately popped into my head. It's like a little Lolita, not a monster, is licking something. Linen was startled when he saw a huge tongue waving from side to side. No, he was definitely taking it back now. It could never be cute at all. A notification was displayed that the mental state had dropped by -40. The tongue continued to study the door and lick the blood off it as Linen stood at the side and trembled in terror. Suddenly, the tongue moved in his direction, licking his shoulder, cheek, and then mouth and nose. The guy's mental state got even worse and dropped by -50 again. Many tongues poked out of the door. Linen pressed himself against the door and tried not to panic, closing his eyes tightly. The main thing was not to panic. Keep absolutely calm and try to calm down as quickly as possible. Otherwise, and in the worst case scenario, he will definitely be devoured by this monster. The monster continued to lick Linen's face and cheeks as he tried to calm down quietly, closing his eyes tightly. A voice rang out saying that a doctor was urgently needed. Linen had to open the door as requested by the monster, complaining of a toothache. Linen was distracted by these words, letting go of his daze and horror a little. What, a toothache? Does this mean that the monster behind the door didn't come to eat him, but to meet the doctor? Linen quietly replied that their shop was usually closed at night. These are their rules, and he can't break them. The monster did not stand on ceremony for long and replied that if he did not help him, the monster would simply devour him. Linen didn't need much persuasion, as he opened the door and immediately bowed to the monster, inviting him to come inside. The Bloodsaw Pharmacy is at his service. A huge face appeared in front of him, like the face of a child. Level, race, combat ability, run, boy. The monster licked its lips, looking at him with its huge red eyes. Description: if you hear children laughing at midnight, if you see a glimmer of light in the dark, please do not go to it, because this is not a ray of hope, but a bait to the abyss. A notification flashed that the mental state had dropped by -20, the mental state had dropped by -20. Linen looked up at the monster. He apologized and asked how exactly he could help him. The monster opened its mouth, revealing its linen and revealing a giant mouth. Sharp, huge teeth were visible in it. The monster kept repeating about the toothache and the doctor, and that if Linen didn't cure it, it would just eat it. A notification flashed that Linen's mental state had dropped to -10. Linen could smell the stench coming from his mouth. His face was filled with fear and horror, and he was sweating profusely. The guy replied that the monster should not worry, and he would definitely cure him, because toothache is nothing, and you should not worry about it. In his head, thoughts kept telling him to calm down, because even though he was ugly, this was still his patient, so he had to go on as if nothing was happening, and his voice was still coming out. The monster continued to stare intently at Linen with its mouth open. He thought about how surprisingly she was even quite cute. Linen moved closer to the monster, asking what kind of tooth it was hurting. The monster replied that the posterior molars in the upper jaw hurt. He demanded to open his mouth wider so that he could take a closer look and understand exactly what the problem was. The monster opened its mouth, and Linen walked right into it. It landed on her tongue, completely sinking into her mouth. The task was highlighted, ding. You have started the task, cure toothache. Your quest reward, +1 special reward, favor, +50, +1000 skull coins, mission failure penalty, absent. Linen roused himself. Was there no penalty for mission failure? It was funny. If he doesn't make it, then he'll be out on his own. Linen covered his nostrils with his hand. It was too hard to see without the light. Now he will be forced to spend energy on unnecessary thoughts and play hard to get. The monster reached out its tentacles to its eye and tore it out of its socket. It stuck an eye in its mouth and used it as an extra light source. Linen was startled and recoiled for a second, but after a moment, he realized what it was for. A notification was displayed stating that the mental state has dropped to -1. The mental state has dropped to -1. In the mouth were various bones of strange creatures, skulls and other garbage. It was safe to say that the contents in the monster's body were quite diverse. Linen continued to hold his hand over his nose and mouth, looking around inside his mouth. Here, without exaggeration, there was a real dump. Suddenly, he noticed a weapon stuck in his mouth from the side. It was a spear with a snake wrapped around it, and it was also being held by a severed arm. It was a holy spear, characteristic, a unique item. Introduction: a spear that entered the dark world from another dimension. It contains associated blessings and has a strong deterrent effect on evil spirits and demons. Linen seems to have found something that caused the toothache. It was a spear, like a witch's weapon, out of this world. Still, this sacred object brings torment and pain to the patient. The monster demanded to pull it out, otherwise, if it didn't pull it out, it would devour Linen. Notifications flashed that a tentacle fragment of the Great Healer +1, the corpse of the Doctor of Black Magic +1, the hand of an unknown sorcerer +1, the eyeball of the Mad Doctor of Purgatory +1 were found. The fragments of these bodies belonged to different doctors. Apparently, before this monster appeared on his doorstep, he visited many other pharmacies. And those dead doctors were once monsters, unable to touch this lump directly, so they couldn't do anything to cure the monster. Linen frowned and flexed his arms. But he was human. The divine power shouldn't have hurt him. Hesitantly, he reached for the spear. He touched it with his finger, and a purple light passed from the point of contact. The behemoth opened its eye in surprise. Linen let out a sigh of relief. Indeed, this was his chance. He wrapped his arm around the spear. Linen turned to the monster and said that he was about to start drawing his spear. The monster immediately screamed loudly. Linen hoped that the spear could be pulled out, otherwise he would end up here just like his poor colleagues. Linen wrapped his hand tightly around the spear and pulled on it, almost pulling it out. The monster continued to watch as Linen struggled to pull that spear out of its mouth. He called out and said what it was doing there, and it would be better to help. The monster was a little surprised, but still shifted its eye to other tentacles and with other free ones reached into its mouth, wrapping it around Linen. He told the monster to get ready, and at his command, on the count of 3, he ordered it to pull. After counting out 1, 2, 3, they abruptly pulled the spear towards them. It struggled out of the monster's gums, and Linen flew backward, falling on his back. Fortunately, he did it. A notification was displayed stating that the goodwill towards Linen had increased by +20. The monster's eye stared intently at Linen. It started screaming that it was hurting, really hurting even though they pulled it out. The monster stared at the bleeding wound from where the spear had been. It said in a familiar manner that if Linen didn't cure it, it would devour him. Linen stood in front of the monster and told it, most importantly, not to worry and not to worry because Linen will definitely help him. I had to stay calm. If one didn't pay attention to the frightening appearance, this monster wasn't much different from his other patients. I needed to show him my good heart, and it would definitely work. Linen bowed in front of him with a nervous smile on his lips. He pointed to the side and told the monster to keep its mouth open and not move. Linen ran out the door of the house, hurriedly grabbing a bunch of different ointments, tools, and anything else that might be useful. He ran back and ran into the monster's mouth with a jerk. It seems that the power of the holy spear remained in the tooth, so the patient still felt a toothache. To completely cure the tooth, it was necessary to deliver a separation device to the root of the tooth. Lin was standing in front of a huge tooth with a hole in the center. However, the bleeding was too much. The monster once again took its eye in its tentacles and watched everything Lin did. He carefully placed the necessary preparations on the adjacent tooth. He couldn't figure out how to properly insert the drug into the wound. At his side was one of the monster's tentacles. He looked at the tentacle, and the tentacle was looking at him. Lin grabbed the base of it and asked if his patient liked the tentacle very much. He really needed it to take the pain out of him. Lin gave it a sharp tug and yanked it out by the roots. The monster gave a sharp cry of pain, dropping its own eye. Many tentacles rushed towards Lin, but they stopped behind the doctor's back and carefully looked at what exactly he was doing. Lin was holding a tentacle and injecting some drug from a syringe. He waved at the monster's eye and called for a light fixture, and quickly, so as not to stare at the extra time just like that. The monster immediately obeyed and started shining its eye while Lin held the tentacle over its tooth. He slammed it into the hole in his tooth and blood spurted out. The tentacle was halfway in, but not all the way in. It was too narrow to fit completely through the gap in the tooth. Lin looked around and carefully considered what exactly he should do. It must be inserted firmly and deeply. He looked around in the hope that he might find some sort of tool. Suddenly, he saw what he was looking for, a huge bone that looked like a hammer. He took a second bone with a sharper end and began to hammer it into the tooth. The monster was in shock at what was happening and the pain it was experiencing. Lin asked him to be patient, because he was going to put even more effort into his treatment than before. Lin continued to hammer a hole in his tooth. The monster kept shouting that it was too painful, and Lin asked him to wait a bit, because they were almost at the root and it would be much easier later. The monster's eyes were already starting to roll back in tears, and it was begging Lin to hurry up, otherwise it would definitely devour it. Finally, he was able to drive the bone all the way in, and it went in, covering the hole in the tooth. Lin finally got over it. The monster screamed in euphoria. The monster looked at Lin and said that it didn't hurt anymore. Lin smiled as he wiped the blood from his cheek and replied that of course, because the medicine finally worked, and all that remained was to check the rest of his teeth. The tentacles wrapped around Lin pleasantly and he laughed, saying that he had already stopped laughing, otherwise his whole body began to itch. A sign with information about what his trust is displayed. Increased to Lin by +20. One of the tentacles was licking Lin's cheek. He looked to the side and said that he needed to buy an electric drill like his teachers, and also buy safety glasses in this operating room. Suddenly, he had everything he needed that he had just asked for in his hands. Lin began to examine the other teeth. He saw one tooth and said that the monster's front tooth was corrupted by divine power. He turned on the drill, starting to drill it. If you don't get rid of the sacred power in the tooth, it will continue to cause unbearable pain to the monster after the medicine has taken effect. He continued drilling into the monster's tooth. Lin added that first he will try to clean the tooth itself and then seal it well and fix it with steel. The monster agreed quite well and believed him, saying that this was what it was all about. A sign with information about what his trust is displayed. It grew to +20. Lin demanded a bucket of water and animal tentacles immediately handed it to him. He continued to clean and drill it until the tooth was shining with cleanliness. The monster asked if there was anything else needed, and Lin replied that he really needed steel to put it on top of the seal, but unfortunately, he probably didn't have enough steel. And if the monster wanted to buy this material, then it had to do it at least tomorrow. The monster cut him off in mid-sentence and said that he would get steel. Together with Lin in their mouths, they sped down the road. The guy panicked and asked where they were taking him. They rushed to the huge steel gate. Lin looked at them carefully and asked that this gate that the monster was talking about was actually made of steel. It seems like it was just iron, not steel, from Lin's perspective. The monster activated its laser, shooting purple light from its mouth, which smashed through the giant iron doors. Someone else appeared in front of them. It was a steel puppet. Level, race, puppet, combat ability, extremely dangerous. Description: a steel puppet whose powers are generated from the darkness itself, causes terror even in the most terrible monster. It instills fear and makes you vulnerable. This puppet is a real nightmare for all representatives of the dark world. Lin stepped out of the monster's open mouth. An iron robot stood before them, its eyes glowing red. There was almost no expression carved into the iron face. Lin noticed him and recognized him. It was an actinic golem. One of these monsters had already come to their shop and was almost destroyed. The teacher fought with him for a very long time. He remembered the picture of his teacher flying a chainsaw at an iron robot. The monster rolled out its huge tongue and sprang up, smashing down directly over the golem's head. The monster landed on top of him, landing on top of the golem's head, causing it to immediately collapse to the ground. Lin was a little surprised by this picture. It was outrageous for him. Did they really have the same levels? There was too much difference between them. The golem fell and lay still, not getting up. The monster asked if one was enough for them to continue on. Several other similar iron golems started to come at them. Linen waved his hands and said in a panic that one would definitely be enough. Linen stood over the golem and concentrated. It only remains to give the steel the desired shape, and then he will definitely be able to help. Linen picked up a saw, sawing the steel into the shapes he needed. After a while, the monster's mouth was already shining, all of its teeth were treated and covered with a steel coating. Linen wiped away the sweat on his forehead. He was extremely satisfied with his work, and the monster's eyes were shining with joy. A notification appeared that read, "Ding. You have completed the mission. Your reward is 1,000 skull coins. Favor plus 50. You have received a special reward, potion formula plus 1. Ding. You have received the achievement, Top Level Monster Dentist. Top Level Monster Dentist. You are the first person who had the courage to cure the tooth of a top level monster and succeed in dealing with it. You get a new permanent stat, Top Level Monster Location plus 1, Inventory plus 10. The monster smiled happily with its toothy mouth and said that it wouldn't eat Linen and that he was cool. Linen bowed and thanked the monster for its praise, because such kind words from his patients motivate him to continue practicing medicine. The sign with the notification that the favor is displayed. It grew by another plus 40. Linen turned to the monster with a friendly smile and asked if his patient would like to use their new dental service. It wasn't easy to win over a monster of this level. It was necessary to do everything possible so that later he would become their regular customer. The monster asked curiously what the dental service was. Linen replied that it consisted of long-term maintenance of all his teeth and health checks at their pharmacy. He might be the first person to try such an exclusive service, and if you are satisfied, you can apply and become a regular customer of their store. The monster listened intently, leaning on its tentacle and thinking. Linen added that they will do the first cleaning completely free of charge. A notification appeared that read, "Ding. You have a new task, help. Take care of your teeth, quest reward, 500 skull coins, favor, plus 50. Linen rushed back into the monster's mouth with a bunch of cleaning items. A pile of garbage flew out of the monster's mouth, someone's hands, garbage, skulls and other remains. A notification appeared that read, "Ding. You have received the severed arm of an unknown creature plus 5, ding. You've got the unknown's limbs plus 54, ding. You got a broken skull plus 31, ding. You have received plus 132 GR of gold, Jin. You received enchanted armor of excellent level plus 1. Linen placed a bucket of dark flowing slime in front of the monster. The monster asked him what it was. The doctor replied that the dark slime creature could produce a large amount of antiseptic and refreshing foam. Combined with special bleaching and disinfecting agents, it can keep your teeth clean and bright, and your breath fresh. The monster smiled happily and agreed. A notification is displayed stating that the favor, it increased by plus 20. Linen picked up a huge brush. He said that the identification of toothpaste from the dark world was complete, and they could start brushing their teeth. Linen armed himself with a brush and bucket, stepping into the monster's huge mouth. He began to wash and polish the monster's teeth. Soap bubbles flew everywhere. The monster smiled and said that it was getting a lot easier. The monster's tentacles appeared next to Linen and he asked with a smile if he wanted to help him. He showed him a bucket with several smaller brushes and ordered him to take one for each hand. Linen guided and explained how to properly brush your teeth. He said that first it was necessary to clean one way, then another, and then another. They also needed to remove dirt between their teeth to prevent the infection from spreading in the future. A notification is displayed stating that the favor increased by plus 10, favorability. Linen sat down and exhaled wearily, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He said that now it remains only to see how the condition of the teeth has changed compared to what it was before. The monster grinned, his eyes twinkling with joy. He looked at his teeth and felt them with tentacles. A notification appeared that read, "Ding. You have completed the task. Your reward is plus 50 skull coins, favor, plus 50. Linen pointed a finger at the monster with a proud smile and asked if it was satisfied with the service rendered. He happily exclaimed that yes. Linen then immediately asked if the monster wanted to become a lifelong member of their shop so that he could come to them at any time of the day or night and treat his teeth for free. The monster enthusiastically replied that he wanted to. Linen took out a notebook and said that New needed the monster to give his name. He needed to write down the name to register in their system. The next time the monster comes to them, it will be able to get a gold membership card and a small gift made especially for it. The monster asked what name he was referring to. Linen said about the name that others call him, and the monster replied that he didn't have such a name. Linen smiled at the monster and asked if he could choose a name for it himself. He decided that the best name for him would be Tiny. The monster beamed and repeated its new name, Tiny. It pulled its tongue out of its mouth and started licking Linen and hugging him with its tentacles. The monster said that he really likes the name and thanks the doctor for everything he did. Linen laughed softly and replied that it wasn't worth thanking. A notification appeared with the description, "Ding. You have named the highest ranked monster baby. New achievement, Supreme Namer. Top Appler. Have you become the first person in the dark world to name a top-ranked monster? You get for this achievement, kinship with a monster +10, the ability to remove the curse of time +1. Tiny carried Linen and turned to walk away. She said that the baby was very happy, a happy baby. Linen waved goodbye to her and told her to take her time and come to them more often. As soon as the baby was out of sight, Linen ran into the house and quickly boarded up the front door. He leaned against it and exhaled, putting his hand to his chest. He thought about how he only survived because of his charm skills. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have been able to survive this night. That demon hunter must have been watching out for top-level monsters. However, he had never seen this monster in Wandering Soul Lane before, which made him think that there must be other, more dangerous and powerful sounds coming from the area where Wandering Soul Lane is located. Linen asked the system to open the character panel. A panel with information appeared. Linen level 5, race, human, strength, 17, agility, 18, intelligence, 21, stamina, 20, special reward, 8, kinship with a higher monster, 2, similarity with a monster, 10, skull coins, 2051, popularity, 34, description, crazy a pharmacist from the Bloodsaw Pharmacy. Just recently caused the chief demon hunter to go berserk in pain. Because of this, Linen has authority among top-ranked monsters, making even the most terrifying monster fear the apothecary's perverted nature. Linen sat at his desk and studied the information about himself. He was surprised that he had as many as 8 special rewards. Right now, he was definitely not a master of combat, so he needed to increase his stamina and agility, which would be very useful for him in the future. The little girl was sitting on the table in front of him, playing with a gun, entertaining herself. Linen continued the thought and thought about what was related to intelligence. It just increased understanding in certain processes, so at the moment, raising the level of intelligence was not very useful. The value of stamina increased from 20 to 28. Linen decided to forget about intelligence a little and improve his physical fitness, because save your life is the primary task. He also remembered that before he named a high demon, he had obtained a new, special skill. He clicked on the desired table and a window appeared with the description, ability to remove a curse. You can select a curse and remove it from a creature within 24 hours. Only one curse could be removed at a time, the time until the next opportunity, 12 hours. It was possible that if he could erase the curse from these revolvers, then he would truly have the legendary weapon of all time. Linen snatched the gun from the poor girl, examining it carefully. Linen shouted, standing with the weapon, that the curse was lifted and a system window appeared with the description, "Ding. You use the curse ability. You can repeat the action only after 12 hours. Ding. You have obtained the power of the cursed river, 100% miss. Remaining time, 24 hours. Linen held up the weapon in front of him with a satisfied smile. Linen smiled and rejoiced at what had finally happened. Although he won't be able to use the power until 24 hours later, this weapon will definitely help him out in an emergency. Linen started firing his weapon, shouting that he was going crazy. Linen started shooting at the bottle, never hitting it once. The bullets began to circle the bottle without shooting through it. Linen frowned and said to the system, did the ability that he obtained turn out to be fake? He had erased the curse, so why was the hit rate still so low? A notification appeared that read, "Ding. You hit the target 0 times. Linen looked at the revolver in his hand in disappointment and became dejected. It seems that if you really want to use this weapon in real combat, then you will have to train a lot in order to learn how to control it and hit it. Linen placed the bottle next to the wall. After all, only with hard work can an iron bar be sharpened into a needle. Linen started shooting everywhere. A sign appeared that announced that basic weapon proficiency had been increased by +1. You had to understand that it was impossible to become a better shooter overnight anyway. Through the holes in the windows, he saw a bright light. A voice could be heard asking about who it was that broke into the territory. A notification appeared that said, you hit 75 items in the room, night shooter, you get +10 experience. Linen carefully boarded up the holes he had made in the window, so he tried to hide evidence from the crime scene. He dared to draw attention to himself like this, and now he was trying to hide. He ran to the bed and pulled the blanket over his head. It hit the target squarely. A sign appeared with a signature that read, "Ding. You have completed the task Sleepless Night. Your reward, +500 skull coins, +1 level. Ding. You have successfully survived the first stressful night after the system woke up and experienced interesting events. You cured 5 patients, killed a demon +1, injured a demon +1, and had a strong psychological impact on patients. You have a feeling of cheerfulness and happiness." Linen woke up, rubbing the back of his head and yawning. Sunlight streamed in from the window. Then a sign flashed on which was written, "Ding. You have successfully reached level 6, you have opened the daily trading exchange system, which is updated every day, and now you can exchange your accumulated money for items of interest to you. Linen carefully read the notifications and thought about how noisy the system was sending out notifications so early. Next notification with information, ding. Friendly reminder, after completing level 10, you will be able to choose a different field of activity for your first shift at work. Please wait. Suddenly, tentacles poked out from under the blanket. He immediately grabbed his weapon and fired, and a notification flashed up with the information that his weapon skill had increased by +1. Linen carefully looked at who it was. It was a little girl with her own little tentacles. A notification appeared stating that the blood child was unable to infect you, and its fear of you increased by +20. Linen leaned back on the pillow. Sure enough, she was trying to infect him again. No wonder he'd felt someone trying to enter his body last night. He remembered curling up in a ball at night and sleeping peacefully, with the girl's huge tentacles reaching out to the man from behind. He actually slept all night with the octopus. I wondered how much this child had grown overnight. Linen opened the system. A notification appeared with information about the hero, blood child of the evil spirit, race, evil spirit, combat ability, chaotic action, level 10. Description, ghost spirit born in the fusion of feelings and resentment, ghost energy, formed by absorbing blood energy in a large number of animal spirits. One day, it will devour the host's soul, flesh, and blood and gradually grow into the embodiment of disaster. P.S. Due to the fact that a person has a psychological shadow, his aggressiveness towards someone is sharply reduced. The next sign with the information flashed up, ding. Since the evil spirit blood child's fear of you has reached 1321 and your taming level has exceeded 200, you will trigger a special quest, Blood Baby Growth. Quest description, the evil spirit blood child has reached a specific status, the formation period of level 10, which means that plasticity at this stage determines the future growth direction and personality of the blood child, because you have played a huge role in its growth. You have received a qualification that allows you to make preliminary adjustments to the child. Objective, to complete the first stage of plastic surgery for the bloody baby. Quest reward, spirit infant taming skill +50, base experience +200. Linen leaned back. Plastic, this means that this baby could still be changed. These feelings were extremely annoying to Linen, and why couldn't they stop them right away? It seems that before forming, he was covered in fear and resentment. Of course, it was worth the risk, otherwise it would be a disaster. The following sign appeared with the information, ding. The target is an evil spirit, a huge resentment in the body of which will constantly change appearance and gradually turn into an extremely evil creature, and the owner will be assigned huge evil characteristics. If this is allowed to develop, the goal will not be achieved. Linen held the little girl's head by the scruff of her neck, which had tentacles hanging out of it. It seemed like he should have suppressed her resentment with fear much earlier, before the formation. This really is a big disaster. A sign appeared stating that the blood child's fear had increased by +1. Linen grabbed its tentacles, pulling them in different directions. He said with a grim face that if he did, he was going to change it completely. There was a notification that the blood child's fear increased by another +20. Linen stood with the child and continued to shake him, saying what a prankster he was, since he had grown so many strange tentacles without his permission. A sign flashed that said blood child's fear increased by +20, then blood child's fear increased by +20. Linen put her down, pressing her tentacles in and telling her to let Linen's uncle do another facelift. After a while, a beautiful cute girl in a dress was sitting in front of him. A notification appeared with information on the sign, ding. You have completed the complete transformation of the evil spirit blood child and have had a positive impact on her inner development. The girl had cute ears sticking out of her head. Linen walked up to her and poked one of her ears, saying with a satisfied smile that he was quite a genius for being able to make a suitable animal skin ear for her. Wasn't that super cute? Linen looked at the girl sternly and told her to keep her face straight, otherwise she would break it. The following system window appeared with information, ding. The initial appearance of the blood baby was determined, and the direction of further development of the baby's growth was changed. Ding. Data processing has started, and data processing has been completed. Linen looked questioningly at the information on the table. Next window with information, blood child, character direction, cunning, resentment, murder, psychological characteristic, distorted, collapsed, sick, growth direction, multi-armed monster, twisted in its shape, brings fear and disaster, carnage and disaster. Would you still like to adjust the character and direction of growth? The characteristics I saw are not at all encouraging. Linen put his hand to his face, looking at the girl in front of him. He appeared in front of her with a huge smile and told her to just let him do it all by himself. Linen tried to fix the little girl again. A system sign popped up with a new description, character direction, cute, well-behaved, kills, psychological characteristics, good-natured, sweet, sick. Growth direction. Sweet little Lolita, on the one hand a beautiful girl who brings people happiness and peace, and on the other, an evil spirit that sows trouble and death. Linen carefully looked at the dancing girl. He asked the system if it could not be adjusted to all the characteristics. He only managed to change half of her evil appearance. A system sign appeared with the description, "Ding. The first stage of development is not enough. You can only configure 2 characteristics." Linen sighed as he patted the girl's head. He said that in this case, she would have to wait until she reached a new level, then the 3 negative characteristics would disappear and she would become an ideal girl. The girl blushed slightly, not answering. Linen shut down the system, saying that it was time to stop there as it was already time for him to prepare for the next patient. The system sign came out with the description, "Ding. You have completed the task. Blood Child has grown. Your reward is Blood Child Taming Skill plus 50, Base Experience plus 200. Ding. The first stage of development has been completed, and now the blood baby will enter a state of deep sleep to complete the initial behavior correction and plastic appearance." Linen went back to practicing his revolver shooting skill. Signs popped up saying that his weapon skill was increased by +1, then his weapon skill was increased by another +1. Linen then decided to clean up by sweeping the floors in the rooms. For this, he was awarded a +1 increase in housework experience, followed by another +1 increase in housework experience. He didn't know how it would work yet, but he was already looking forward to opening the exchange system. All attributes are generated by the system, and for sure, the quality should be up to par. Linen couldn't wait with impatience. He leaned on his fist and asked the system to open the exchange function. It has already presented many unusual and interesting things. A list of items that he could purchase appeared in front of him. Item 1, Toxic Slime for 10 milliliters 50 coins. Item 2, Lucky Cat Doll that brings good luck 200 coins. Item 3, Baby Diaper 10 pieces 50 coins. Item 4, Formula for Flesh Growth Potion 500 skull coins. Item 5, Blood Demon Meat plus 5 100 skull coins. Item 6, Perfume Bottle 500 skull coins. The next notification appeared, "Ding. The shopping center interface opens." Linen drooped. Obviously, these were not the incredible and interesting products that he had expected. He was indignant and shouted what it was, and did they really think that he needed all this stuff? You shouldn't have joked with him like that. He demanded to update the product range immediately. Linen clenched his hand into fists. In response to his request, a notification was displayed, "Ding, this function is not open yet. Please wait, it will automatically update at 5 o'clock every day." Linen fell silent. Well, although this exchange center is diverse, but it did not meet Linen's expectations. In any case, it can be considered as an additional way to purchase goods. Linen crossed his legs, deep in thought. He looked carefully at the list of products and poked at the appropriate line. He decided to buy a toxic slime that could be used to make a simple potion in the future. A notification was displayed that -50 skull coins were debited. He looked at the lucky cat. The picture was of a red-haired cat with red eyes. The lucky cat doll that brings good luck, what was the use of it, I wonder? Linen felt like he would be lucky if he bought it for himself. He looked at it carefully and still decided that he would buy a doll. Now he had something to send as a gift. A red cat with a huge smile and red eyes fell from somewhere in the sky. A notification was displayed stating that another -200 skull coins were debited. He looked carefully at the next item, baby diapers. He shifted his gaze to the little girl. Linen thought that this could be quite useful for himself. After patting the girl on the head, he still decided to buy this product as well. A notification was displayed that another -50 skull coins were debited. Unexpectedly, Linen Ion's eyes saw the following. Flesh Growth Potion Formula. After taking the potion, the recovery rate of injuries can significantly increase. The necessary materials, blood demon meat, slime, tyrant flower, piranha growth hormone. Linen carefully looked at the item with a satisfied smile. It looked really good. He was looking at the entire range of the store. There was even blood demon meat on sale. Linen decided that it was also worth buying just in case. A sign showed that -500 skull coins were debited, and then -100 skull coins were debited again. The formula of the flesh growth potion, and the system rewarded him with a critical hit potion yesterday. Now that Linen has all the ingredients he needs, he can make 2 whole potions. Linen walked over to a table that was filled with various papers and folders. It was a good thing that he was able to buy so many different raw materials for his potions today. Yesterday, he was able to make a lot of money from selling small crochet teeth, just in time to exchange them for something more valuable. Suddenly, the door opened and an elderly, wrinkled old woman entered the room. In her hand, with its huge, long nails, she held what looked like a basket shaped like a head. It had a leather handle, and the bag itself was in the form of a head with sewn eyes and mouth. She turned to Linen and asked if he could find some trash for the old woman. The system window with a notification appeared, in which it was written, "Tink. You have received a new task, useless trash, task reward, plus 50 skull coins, plus 100 base experience, scavenger favor plus 50, special reward plus 1. Linen came out to meet Grandma with a huge garbage bag and replied that yes, there is. The old lady said that did he really have so much extra junk accumulated today. Linen clasped his hands with a smile and offered to load it all into the cart for her, and the old lady agreed, apologizing in advance for bothering her. A notification window appeared with the inscription, "Ding. You have completed the task, plus 50 skull coins, plus 100 base experience, scavenger favor plus 50. Suddenly, her bag glowed with a purple light and she asked if there was something in the bag that gave off a top-level aura. A sign flashed up notifying that the scavenger's suspicion of him had increased by plus 10. Linen smiled and scratched his head, answering that yes, just last night I cured the tooth of a monster of the highest rank. And this was what he had cleaned out of the monster's mouth. The old lady immediately shivered and turned pale, asking that Linen had been inside the mouth of a top-ranked monster and it somehow didn't eat it. She used to think that Linen was just a normal human child, but how dare he do such a thing? Linen looked at the old lady and asked why she was so scared. After all, he didn't do anything wrong and just cured the patient. This was his main job. No matter who visited their pharmacy, they would treat them the same as everyone else. The old lady was not too impressed and continued to look at Linen with the same disbelief. She asked how this was possible. In this case, Linen is really a brave fellow. There were 3 soul hunters hanging around here last night, and obviously not with the best of intentions. The one Linen helped was probably the smaller of the 3, and Granny advised him to stay away from them. A notification was displayed that the scavenger's suspicion of his person increased by another plus 10. Last night, on the street, Slaughter Lane and Evil Soul Street, and the nearby Shady Soul Lane, all the monsters were killed. 15 towering monsters and 10 demonic spirits were almost completely destroyed. The bounty hunter Ha that Linen met yesterday supposedly wanted to cure his tooth, but what he really wanted was to feed on their alley of wandering souls. And from the looks of it, it was thanks to Linen that they were able to avoid the disaster in Wandering Souls Alley. Linen spread his hands with a smile on his face and replied that he thought that customer from yesterday was quite harmless and cute, and maybe in reality he can't be as evil as they say. The old lady paled and remained silent at Linen's words, clearly not expecting such a reaction. She screamed and said what kind of cute he was talking about, and how did he even think to call him that. Linen scratched his head with a smile and replied that he was actually really cute. The system window flashed up and said, "Ding. You have left a deep and indelible impression in the scavengers' hearts. Ding. Your popularity on Wandering Souls Lane has increased plus 1, Jin. Your popularity on Wandering Souls Lane has increased plus 1. The old lady drooped, looking down. She said that of course, in the dark world, you couldn't meet anyone who was normal, and especially not someone who looked normal. Linen had given her too much this time, and it would take her a long time to process it. She reached into her bosom, pulling out a human heart in her clawed hand. It was bright red and you could see that it was still beating inside. She handed it to Linen and said that she had picked it up recently, and he could take the heart for himself if he needed it more. Linen roused himself. A notification flashed that Linen's mental state had dropped by minus 10. The next system tablet contained information: the heart of a faceless demon. Characteristic: cursed item. Curse can be associated with a specific demon. It requires fresh blood every day. Description: every powerful monster carries a curse, especially its heart. If you can hear your own heartbeat, then you need to be careful because there is a high probability that this heart no longer belongs to you. Linen felt his heart start to pound. The old lady with a bloodthirsty smile and a heart in her hand added that if Linen suddenly wanted to kill someone, he could just think about it, and the heart would start torturing the unfortunate person with the most cruel methods. And that's when Linen will find true happiness. Linen carefully looked at the old lady, grinning and taking the heart for himself. Of course, the old woman couldn't give something normal. Just by looking at what it does, you will know that this heart is a real killer. The old lady turned around, walking away, and said goodbye to Linen until we meet again. Linen thoughtfully said goodbye to the old lady, following her with his eyes. This old woman will come to them every day, so it's worth considering her as an NPC for later exchange in the future. Suddenly, 2 black horses appeared, running up to Linen not far away. It was a delivery, and the guy called them over. He was holding a black bag in his hand. He said that as usual, the warehouse is full of goods. Linen returned to his house with a huge black bag in his hands. He dropped it tiredly on the floor, looking at the door. There was a knock, which meant that someone had come again. Linen opened the door and was startled by what he saw: a young tall girl in a red dress, with white hair and green hair. She was holding something in her hand. With a smile on her face, she said that the business seemed to be booming. A notification appeared with the description: evil spirit in bloody clothes, level, combat ability, acts chaotically, feature, it will consume your soul. Description: dark spirits distorted by beauty should never attract you with their charm, otherwise prepare for a nightmare. After taking a deep breath, Linen greeted the guest and asked if the girl had a medical condition that required urgent treatment. With a smile on her face, the girl replied that nothing was bothering her. She'd moved into their street this morning and was just about to visit the neighbors. The girl licked her red lips. She added that he should not greet her in such a formal way. Linen reached for his revolver with a smile on his face, pulling it out from under his shirt. He said, "Welcomito her. For monsters that can't be determined by their power level, it will be useless to affect the psyche." They went inside and sat down together. If she really has bad intentions, then it will be impossible to stop her now, so it will be better to continue communicating in a friendly atmosphere. A sign with a description of the information flashed up. Ding. New mission, survive, mission goal, before the evil spirit reaches 100% malice. Keep your mental state value at least 0, and also make sure that the enemy's malice does not reach 100 for the first 30 minutes. Reward plus 500 skull coins, plus 200 base experience, plus 1 special reward. Linen frowned, a survival quest similar to last night. Could it be that the woman in front of him was as dangerous as a top-ranked monster? The girl stuck her finger out on the table and asked why the doctor didn't look like the locals. And isn't he afraid of being eaten by disgruntled patients? Linen's mental state dropped by -10. The girl was sitting next to Linen at the table. Linen calmly replied that of course, although he was still scared, but it was his direct duty as a doctor to treat patients and protect their health, so he should treat his patients seriously, and this is the main principle of a doctor. The girl stood up and smiled charmingly as she stood next to Linen. She said, "What about those who are not, that is, not his patients?" The girl leaned close to Linen's ear and added that it was like if she just came to eat it. There was a notification that the danger level has increased to 61%. Linen replied with a smile that it was impossible, because she was so beautiful, so her heart should be just as beautiful. She is such an amazing and elegant lady, it seems that she is refined and graceful like a noble during a meal. The girl stood up and smiled, answering the guy's words with the fact that he was very eloquent. There was a notification that the danger level was reduced to 56%. She sat back down across from him and asked if he really thought she was very beautiful. Linen agreed, after which a huge smile appeared on the girl's face from ear to ear and huge sharp teeth. Toothy worms popped out of her mouth. She asked him if he still thought she was beautiful. The system window warned that Linen's mental state had dropped by -30. The woman's face contorted, and Linen jumped out of his seat, backing away. One by one, a notification appeared that the danger level had increased to 81%, then to 85%, then to 90%. It opened its mouth right in front of Linen's face, and the expression on his face twisted. The girl asked if she was really beautiful. The danger level has increased to 99%. Linen blushed and reached out to kiss the girl on the lips. The girl just stared at the guy with his mouth open and the worms still wriggling out of it. She blushed and asked what Linen had just done. The danger level has been reduced to 50%. Linen's blush deepened and he replied that she came up to him so suddenly that he suddenly realized how much he wanted to kiss her. He also apologized for his rudeness, it's just that it completely matches his ideal girl type. She asked if she was really his type, and Linen said yes, because he was crazy about slug girls with good teeth and tentacles. This was especially true for a girl like her, who was truly the white moonlight of his heart. The girl blushed and thought about how she felt so calm when she showed her beautiful and real face, but she was so excited to reveal her terrible face to him, there was definitely something wrong with Linen. The girl noticed the change in the guy's face for a second and asked what had happened and that he might have been really scared after all. She approached him, and Linen said that he really wanted to give her first-class oral care. The girl stared at his words. She clearly didn't immediately understand what she had just heard.